Can't see her. So I'm waiting for Gita. Good evening, everyone. I'm waiting for Gita Aravamudan. We are going to have a conversation. Gita, I've sent you an invite. We'll be discussing why women write, and I'll be in conversation with Gita Aravamudan, a journalist based in Bangalore, and we'll be specifically talking about surrogate motherhood. Gita, did you get my invite? Add. Okay, adding Gita. You wait. Yeah. Hi, Gita. I think I'll have to adjust my
camera a bit.
Yeah, camera a bit. Okay.
Okay.
আৰু এটা কুশন লৈ আহিলে ষ্টেণ্ডটো ক'ত আছে I'm not very needs to be raised, right? So hi, so we are both wearing blue. Gita,
Yeah.
can you hear me?
I can
we
hear
are both
you, but you
wearing
have to
blue.
come down a bit. We can't see your face.
I have to come down.
It. Now I can see you.
You can see me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Did you know telepathically that I'm going to wear blue?
I don't know. I just no. I. It seems I have to come down. But can you see me?
Yeah, this is fine now. This is fine.
You can see me, but I'm just checking if the third person can see me, because you are clear.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good. We came 5 minutes before time so that we can check all these technical.
Some of my friends are already watching.
Okay. 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 So yeah. Can you see me now? You can see me.
Can you hear, Anjana?
Okay. Yeah, now I think it's better. This is fine, right? Yeah. So maybe our viewers can tell us if they can see us. Yeah, I'm sure they can't see us fully, but yeah, they'll have to see us partially. So we are audible and we are visible. So I think that's a good start.
Yeah.
And both Miss Blue from Assam and Bangalore. Someone says, I want to see more of you. I don't know how. Yeah. Well, we are trying this for the first time, so I don't know. Maybe.
Please smile a little. Look very relaxed, Panika.
Is it okay? So, shall we start? Yeah, I think we have a couple of friends who have joined us.
Yeah.
Well, welcome to Thumbprint Conversation, and we are having we're doing a series on why women write, and we're very. It's an honor and a privilege to have Gita with us today, and for the uninitiated. Gita Aravamudan is a journalist and an author who started her professional writing career at the age of 20 as a trainee with the Hindustan Times Delhi in 1967. When she was 21, she became a full-fledged reporter for Indian Express, Bangalore. I think I'll switch off the fan. Yeah. So she was the first woman reporter in the city. She has been an independent journalist now for several decades and continues to write for a wide range of English language publications from all over the country and abroad. She has also won a couple of national awards for her writing. Although she writes on a wide range of subjects, her main focus has been on issues related to gender and empowerment. Gita is a TEDx speaker. Apart from that, she has conducted workshops on gender sensitivity for various institutions, including the police department. She also speaks on empowerment and other gender-related issues at various fora like colleges and government training institutes. Uh, Gita, I think have you switched on the fan? I think you can switch off
No,
the
I
fan.
haven't.
Oh,
I
okay.
don't have fan on.
Okay. So her book on narrative journalism, Baby Makers, The Story of Indian Surrogacy, is the first ever comprehensive book on the subject and has received excellent reviews and has been translated into Japanese. Her book, Disappearing Daughters, The Tragedy of Female Feticide, has won the Dudley Award for Gender Sensitivity in 2012. Her other books, Color of Gold, a mystery novel set in a gold mining town, Unbound Indian Women at Work, The Healing, a novel set in Chennai, and Voices in My Blood, have all been well received. She co-authored ISRO, a personal history, with her husband, R. Aravamudan, an ISRO pioneer. This has already gone into second reprint. It has been translated into 2 languages and made into an audio book. So, Gita, you have you are a veteran in the field, and you were one of the first female reporter of Bangalore. You were the first female reporter of Bangalore at the age of 21 in the year 1968, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And
But
so,
yeah.
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 So,
Go ahead.
how have you seen journalism over the years? How have you seen journalism evolve over the years? And is being a woman or a female a factor at all in the media world? And since you pursued this whole gender agenda, did you do it consciously, or was it was it a deliberate move? So can you just tell us about your journey as a journalist?
Right. But before I speak, I would like to say thank you to Teresa, who's really one of those journalists who's done great things, and having reported from Northeast all along, she actually has covered, insurgency, and she's gone into really places where, women don't normally go. So Teresa's whole history is very, very different from mine. And mine was a kind of a long journey, but hers has been a very rapid and vivacious one. And her latest book is Bulletproof, which shows how journalists have to be bulletproof to be able to cover such incidents. And of course, she's won a whole lot of awards. And she is continues to write books. She's especially focusing on the Thumbprint, which covers stories from the Northeast. Anyway, to come back to me, I always wanted to write. So since this is about why women write, that I think I just wanted to write since when I was a teenager. But when I tried to get into journalism, because I wanted to be a writer and not an editor, and I wanted to be on the field, no newspaper wanted to take me. And those days there was not much option. Either the newspapers were the only places where you could get a job as a journalist. And no newspaper wanted me because I was a woman, not for any other reason. There was no specific reason why they did not want me. So I interned at Hindustan Times for a while, but then I had to come back because it was an internship. And I came back to Bangalore. And in Bangalore, I tried all the newspapers. Those days, there were only two or three. There was Deccan Herald, which was the most famous. There was Indian Express. And there was Hindu, which had a very small staff. So these were in in Bangalore. So I joined Indian Express because they were the people who gave me a job. And I found that in the beginning, I was only given all these assignments which are meant for girls, which is like flower shows and Ikebana exhibitions and, Inner Wheel Club meetings. They were fun, but, this is not what I wanted to do. I wanted to do what I thought was real journalism. So I had a very good chief reporter who was very sympathetic and empathetic called Mr. V.N. Subrao, who is famous in the journalistic circles in Bangalore. And he said, okay, I'll take you along with me or I'll send you on assignments. So I got to cover crime and all sorts of things, crime and politics and film. That was very unusual in those days. Today, women do everything, but in those days, that was a very unusual thing to happen. After that, me,
You saw,
um,
yeah.
a journalist was because they said I would get married and go away. After all, I was 21, and that is the age when girls got married in those days. And sure enough, as according to their prediction, I got married when I was 23. And I had to leave Indian Express and go because my husband was in space research and he was in Tumba, Trivandrum, which is a very corner of India. And when I went there, I found I could not get a job because there were no the Hindu was there and the Indian Express, and they all had just one or two staff. So I was back to square one. Then I started writing freelancing. And for most of my life, I've been a freelancer because, that way I've been independent and I could write for many magazines and so on. But so that's how I started writing. I don't know if everybody can hear I'm getting some messages saying we can't hear. Is there
Is
anybody
it?
who cannot hear? Yeah.
I can see a message from someone called Asha. She said that I use both of the books for my book about adoption and the position of women. Great to hear this interview in the Netherlands. She's writing from the Netherlands. Yeah.
Yeah, I know Asha. She herself has been adopted from India. Hi, Asha. And she's doing great work now, helping girls in India. She's been in the Netherlands for quite some time. I mean, right since she was a little girl. And we got in touch because she read Disappearing Daughters, which was my very first book. And that is about, sex selective abortion and how it has affected the gender ratio in India. And Asha told me her whole story. And now
Hmm.
I think surrogacy is my latest book. Would you like me to talk about surrogacy now, or is there any questions that you would like to ask
Yeah,
me or
yeah,
anything?
yeah. Yeah, that's what I wanted to ask. Now families are no longer formed only in the traditional way, from
Mm,
adoption, IVF, and now surrogacy. So,
mm,
please tell us about your book, Baby Makers: The Story of Indian Surrogacy.
mm.
Why did you choose surrogacy? What prompted you to choose this topic for your book?
Well, it was actually a subject which interested me because I was wondering, as a mother who was born to babies myself, I was wondering how is it for a mother to carry a baby for someone else, knowing that she may have to give up the baby as soon as it is born. I mean, that was a simple premise with which I started this investigation, but it really turned out to be a whopper of an investigation because there are so many nuances to surrogacy. By the way, when the surrogacy bill was introduced, I realized that they didn't realize how many things, how complicated is the whole process. The surrogate, even I didn't know. Surrogacy is only the last part of an IVF procedure. Many
Mhm.
people go through IVF because they want to have a baby of their own, which genetically related to them. And they may not have to use a surrogate because, if the woman's uterus is fine, then she can bear her own baby. So the surrogate comes into the picture only when the woman is not able to bear her own baby.
Mhm.
And this is much more common than you would imagine. There are women who are born without uteruses. There are women who are infertile due to various other reasons. They have a weak womb and therefore they cannot. And of course, in the modern day concept, or even, I wouldn't even say modern day, it is always, there is the need for various people who are either unmarried or divorced or widowed, that is, single women who may want to have a baby of their own. And they're not worried of what society will say or anything. They would rather go through IVF and carry a baby. Some of them may not be able to carry it themselves. In that case, they may have to hire a surrogate. So,
Mhm.
what exactly is a surrogate? A surrogate is a woman who is willing to carry a baby for somebody else. Now, the surrogacy bill, when I investigated this whole thing, surrogacy was neither legal nor illegal. There was no law against surrogacy. And all we had to go by was the ICMR guidelines, which
Mhm.
which tried to regulate who can become a surrogate and whether they try to see that the surrogate is not exploited or that the commissioning parents are not exploited. So what I found over there is there's a whole web over there. So there are the parents who are longing to have a baby. They are couples, or they may be, they may be same-sex couples, or they may be, the traditional couples, or they may be a single women or single men who all may want to have babies because they want somebody genetically related to them. So when they go in for this, what happens is there are many people involved in this, many uh, technicians, many doctors. The IVF is done in a clinic which deals with IVF, and the surrogate is supplied by somebody else who's a surrogate agent. The parents could be from anywhere in the world. They would come here. They would hire the surrogate. Suppose they do not have the necessary gametes, that is, the sperm is not good or the woman's eggs are not good, then what happens? Then they have to get that also from somebody else. So there is a whole lot of things, whole lot of procedures. So surrogacy is one part of the entire large IVF uh, process. But I decided
Okay. 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 Mm-hmm. I think there's a problem with the. I think there's a problem with the network. Yeah. Yeah.
Is it connected now?
Yeah. Yeah.
Can you hear
Yeah.
me?
It was. Yeah. Now you're clear. Yeah. Yeah. So it goes
Okay.
off. I mean,
Okay,
you
now
start
can you hear
freezing.
me?
Yeah. Now you're clear.
I know.
Okay. So
So,
you said you bits. So can you tell us narrate some anecdotes? Meeting those surrogates. What kind of women were they, and how how did you feel after meeting them? Because usually the impression is that they are exploited, or it could also be the other way around, that they are empowered. They know they want to use their womb, for whatever reasons, for surrogacy. Or you can say that they are being exploited, their womb is being exploited. So when you met these women, how did you feel?
um, okay, let me first say I am a feminist, and therefore, to me, the focus is on empowering women. So, when I first went to talk to surrogates, I thought they could be a very exploited lot, and that, they are forced to give away their kids. And how do they feel? Do they feel that maternal bond with the child? And so on. But what I found was completely different. And I'm saying this after talking to many surrogates in many homes. I went and visited Naina Patel's clinic in Anand. Then I spoke to many surrogates in Bangalore, in Delhi, in Andhra, so many places. And I've spoken to surrogates at various seminars and all, who have come there. So these women are into surrogacy, fully knowing what they are in for. They know that the baby that they are bearing is not for themselves. And in fact, because instances, um, they are they are actually wanting the money that they get. So they get about so before the ICMR brought in any regulations, and before people actually took notice of this, many of them were being exploited. Somebody might take their domestic helper and ask her to become a surrogate and just give some little bit of money and go away. But by the time I had got into researching, there was people were given contracts and they were told that they will get. So usually a surrogate would get about 3 to 4 lakhs in those days. That is about 7, 8 years ago. I don't know what is going now. And most of the surrogates were taken and kept in surrogate homes by the doctors. Now, this might sound exploitative to you, because some people said, oh, they're kept like prisoners there. It wasn't that. See, there are two problems over there. One is that the surrogates themselves, they don't want the society around them. They may be coming from, she may be an auto rickshaw driver's wife, or she may be a teacher's wife, or so they don't want the mohalla around them to know that they're carrying somebody else's baby, or whether she's. So
Mm.
once she's about 3, 4 months pregnant, she would prefer to move out to some other place where she can give birth to the baby in privacy. And after the baby is born, she knows that she has to give it up. So the surrogate homes in that way served a very important purpose.
Mm.
Medical checkup and so on. And I'm not saying this is the perfect system, but it was as good a system as possible at that time. And many of them signed contracts. And most of the parents were very happy that they were finally going to get a baby, and that happiness of the parents who originally could not have a baby, that gave the surrogates a lot of joy in themselves. It also gave them a lot of pride. See, suppose she's an uneducated woman who may not have got a job in any other way, and there is this highly educated PhD baby on her own, because she feels that she can do something which other women can't do, and she's helping her in a way. And so that is also one of the aspects of it. And what was the flip side was that, if the woman had an abortion, for instance, then she would have to go through the whole process all over again, or she would have to quit and she would not be paid. So the money came only in, chunks, like when when you got into IVF, and then when the first heartbeat is seen, and when the next. So there is a process in the whole thing. The parents, some of them when I spoke to, said, in the good clinics they were not particularly. I mean, they didn't feel exploited, but there was one person who was arrested in Bangalore because of, for a different reason. He put somebody else's embryo into the surrogate and convinced the parents that it was theirs, and he was later on arrested and all that. So he was very exploitative in the sense that, he would take money from the parents, saying, unless you give this, I'll have to bring an end to this procedure. What does bring an end to the procedure mean when the child is growing in the womb? That means I'll have to abort it. So the parents would do anything at that time, right, to continue with this thing. So there was exploitation on both sides, but exploitation basically by the agents, I would say, who or these fly-by-night clinics who were doing this. But by and large, I think many people were satisfied, and then there were all these gay couples who came from Spain and various other countries, or other countries where surrogacy was not allowed. And they also exploited our system because they came and had a child through surrogacy here. And according to the rules over here, when the child is born, the mother, that is of the couple who was commissioned, her name would be put as a mother over there. But they would say, that, in Germany, baby is not allowed, and children have been left here for months together. So all that was tightened up later on, like the embassies were told that if it is not allowed in your own country, in Germany or wherever, then those people cannot come. And the people who came for IVF to India were given special visas that they were coming for. They were coming for medical treatment and IVF treatment. So this was going on for quite some time. And about 4 or 5 years ago, the government suddenly decided that surrogates are being exploited. And so they said surrogates should not be given money. That is, commercial surrogacy is very bad, and only uh, um, altruistic surrogacy should be allowed. Now, this, a lot of us fought against it because after carrying a child in your womb for 1 year, for 9 months, takes 1 year of your life. Going through IVF treatment takes off another 6 months of your life, of your life, in the sense it's not killing you, but it is uh, taking up your time, and you can't take up any other job at that time, and so on. So who's going to compensate you for that? So now in the latest bill that has been said, they are calling it compensate. They don't want to use the word commercial because they feel that somebody said, the whole beautiful and romantic concept of motherhood gets uh, ugly when you call it commercial. I mean, this in my view is a male point of view. Motherhood is motherhood, and the women who give birth to the baby, they're very. I mean, they part with the baby. Of course, I talked to many of them. Some of them said, yes, it feels very difficult to part with the baby because I've carried it for so many months, but I'll get over it because I have my own children whom I have to look after. And that is the reason why I came into surrogacy. So I met one woman who had given birth to Australian twins, and I remember her telling me what surprised me most. Look at the color of my skin; it's dark, and those children were born totally white. Now, why does this happen? Because the the womb of the surrogate is just like a what do you say oven or a incubator for the baby. None of her genetic material gets into the baby. So you can have Chinese, Korean, or whatever babies come, and they will only have the genetic traits of their own parents. So that's one thing. Now, of course, our government has put an end to all that. Nobody is allowed to come from outside, utilize the IVF, the thing over here. I mean, I don't know if they're allowed to have IVF treatment, but they're not allowed to have higher surrogates over here. So there's a whole lot of other the differences which have come up over the years, and especially when this was clamped down and said, not have you cannot export or import embryos. You cannot have foreigners coming in, and there are so many surrogates already carrying babies for foreigners. So and the until the baby is born, and then we'll clamp this down. And then there are embryos which people who are so happy with the whole procedure over here that they had stored they had frozen and stored here, thinking that they'll come back after time and have some more some more children of their own. What do you do with those if you cannot export import? So these whole thing has to be thought through very carefully, because you're playing with life. You're playing with the bees. And another thing which I think that has not been carefully thought through is when parents come, especially from other countries, they were not carefully examined to see if they had any criminal records or something. So when pedophile came and had babies through a surrogate, yeah, and he had a criminal in Australia. So there are all these little things which happen, and then of course you ask, how can the surrogates be exploited? They can be exploited by the agents who might not give them the entire money. They can be exploited by doctors who, and what if a surrogate dies? Does she have insurance? These are all things which have to be thought out. And surrogacy, as I said, is a small part of it. There are the women who donate. Now, it's called egg donation, but actually they are paid. And in order to get eggs, like you and I, we may produce 2 or 3 eggs during each menstrual cycle. But these women are given hormones. Even if you want to go through IVF, you have to have hormonal injections, and they boosted in there so that they can produce more eggs. And in their greed, times some of the doctors, being exploitative, might overdose of hormone injections. And I came across a very beautiful Nepali girl, or rather, she was beautiful before she went through this, and she'd completely become ravaged because she'd been given a yeah. So eggs also, we have not. I mean, neither the Artificial Reproductive Technology Act bill nor the surrogacy bill, which are the bills which are now pending before Parliament, which haven't yet been passed. Neither of them really addresses the whole issue of egg donation. Now, just because it's called egg donation doesn't mean that it's not commercial. It is also commercial. Even sperm is paid for, egg is paid for. You can even buy it here if you want. So, all these things are also commercial transactions, which we have to look at and say which is okay, which is not okay. How much should the surrogate be compensated? I mean, if you want to call it that euphemistically, how much should be compensated? What should be the circumstances under which he is kept? Sometimes, in some weeks, they ask the surrogates to feed the babies after for 2, 3 months so that the
Oh,
babies can get milk. Does
oh,
that affect the surrogate more? Does she become more attached to the baby? How much does
hmm,
she get paid? I don't think anybody has done full investigation into all these things.
hmm,
And I
hmm,
really feel bills are finally passed. A
hmm,
lot of more groundwork has to be done.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I was reading about this term called fertility tourism. So I
Mm.
was quite, that is something, uh, well, I also had read somewhere about traditional surrogates in certain parts of India where, a relative or someone is,
Yeah, that is what is called an altruistic surrogate. Suppose your
okay,
sister
okay,
is willing to carry a baby for you,
okay,
and
okay.
she does, then it is not that it's not a biological problem, but it can become a social problem
Mm-hmm.
because a child will grow up in a house knowing that the surrogate who carried the baby was mother's own sister, and
Mm-hmm.
there could be family problems because of that. So
Mm-hmm.
generally, even the doctors advise it is better not to get somebody from your own family because there could be problems at a later date. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know. I haven't really investigated this enough. First of all, investigating this article, this book itself was a problem because most people don't want to talk. The surrogates were willing to talk, but especially the commissioning parents, either
Mm-hmm.
they are worried that socially they'll be ostracized, or
Mm-hmm.
uh, you know, uh, that they may run into some other problems. I wanted to also say, there are two types of parents, or several types of parents. Like, I mean, they're human beings like anybody else. So, one couple I saw, met in Bangalore actually. I
Mm-hmm.
think they were both software engineers, and maybe in their 40s or so. And the surrogate was giving birth to the baby in the labor room.
Mm-hmm.
And the surrogates, a husband, mother, and two children were all waiting outside. And these
Mm-hmm.
two people were somewhere, and they were not, I mean, somehow they were working on the computers and they were not even worried about the baby which was being born over there. Whereas
Mm-hmm.
the husband of the woman was worried, and then after the baby was born, they took the
Mm-hmm.
baby and gave it off to them. And the husband said, we didn't even get to look at the baby. So that's
Mm-hmm.
one extreme case, where they are. There are
Mm-hmm.
others who come and they do this, baby shower for the woman, and then they treat her so well. They bring her saris and they give her gold. I've known people who give gold to surrogates and money and all that. And they
Mm-hmm.
treat them like family. And they're not even
Mm-hmm.
proud to show off that this is the woman who bore my baby, who carried her in her womb for so long, and I'm so grateful to her. So there are the two extremes. And when I ask the
Mm-hmm.
surrogates, whom do you like? I mean, who do you think are the perfect? There are some women who've given birth twice as surrogates. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, they liked the
Mm-hmm.
experience so much, they went back because they liked the money also that they got.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, foreigners are nice because they are more lavish with their money. Whereas
Mm-hmm.
Indians are, I mean, some of them are good, some of them are bad, but the worst are the Koreans who don't give money at all. So, these are all stray comments, and I wouldn't go too much by it, but this is the kind of thing that there are some who are really happy, but all of them do get paid mostly. There are some
Mm-hmm.
people who prefer to keep the surrogate in their own homes. I don't know, could it be exploitative? And this again is a problem I had with when the first surrogacy bill said the surrogate should be a close relative. Now, what
Mm-hmm.
is a close relative? The close relative may not want to give, especially in today's
Mm.
society where
Yeah.
everybody is busy doing things. She may not want to
Mm.
take time off to give birth to somebody. I mean, however close your relative is, your child.
Mm. Mhm.
And so that could lead to a lot of friction. So what would this do? You can collect a relative of yours or even a non-relative and say, this is my
Mm.
close relative and blood relative, and she's coming for
Mm.
free. So it
Ah.
gives rise to more exploitation. It is possible because there's no rule, there's no law. So what we need is properly addressing surrogacy as a profession which needs to be paid, needs, okay, let me not say paid because it's a not a politically correct word. It has to be compensated. Those who donate eggs, they have to be willing, they have to sign to say that yes, I'm ready to, and they should keep a medical record of how many times the eggs were harvested from them, how many times they got, and what was the compensation they received. See, donating male gametes, that is sperm, is not as tough as uh, donating eggs. So, in my opinion, both the bills came out mostly from a male perspective because not realizing what are all the tough things that women go through to carry babies, to get the IVF done. And so IVF itself is a very painful procedure. As many who are watching today will be able to say. Yeah.
And in fact, I had heard a passage from your book which talks about a prosthetic belly.
Yeah.
So please tell us more about the accessories associated with surrogate motherhood. And if you could
Yeah,
read
this
out
is
a
this
passage.
prosthetic. I think
Hmm.
this prosthetic belly is only used by women coming from very traditional families who
Hmm.
want to make their relatives believe that they are carrying the child themselves, whereas it is a
Hmm.
surrogate who is carrying the child. So there was a woman apparently in Gujarat who was making the
Hmm.
prosthetic belly, but
Hmm.
which was reported in Indian Express, and I quoted it in my book. Later, a lot
Hmm.
of people called me and asked me, do I know her address or phone number? But I didn't. They were not
Hmm.
able to locate her. But
Hmm.
apparently in Ahmedabad, there are people who make prosthetic bellies. And
Hmm.
also prosthetic bellies are used for acting, on stage or in theaters and all, because,
Hmm.
or in film, because you want somebody to pregnant. So the same
Hmm.
prosthetic belly can be used by, not by the surrogate, but by the
Hmm.
commissioning parent who want, woman
Okay.
who wants to appear pregnant for her relatives.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Have you ever seen one? This
No, I haven't
belly?
seen
Or
one.
okay.
No, I haven't. But
Do you
now
have your
whenever I see a belly on the film or something, that must be the prosthetic belly. Yeah.
okay? Do you have the book with you? I mean, would you like to read out a passage?
Yeah, sure. I get it.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yeah,
This
maybe
is
something
my
about that.
book.
Yeah, the baby
Yeah.
makers. Yeah. Hmm.
This is the baby makers.
Okay.
And what should I read out? There's a lot of people like this when I talked about what could be the future. See, today
Hmm.
we are using surrogates, but
Hmm.
there could be a time. The
Hmm.
people already are doing a lot of research on artificial wombs. So suppose you
Hmm.
have an artificial womb, then the
Hmm.
surrogates would go out of business actually, because people
Hmm.
might just like to go and once the IVF is done, place the
Hmm.
baby in the artificial womb
Hmm.
and have it. So there are a lot of things which are very science fictionish. And I
Hmm.
think I would like to read from one of those chapters. I'm sorry, you took me by surprise, so I'll have to look it up.
Okay. Uh-huh.
So this is called Virgin Births and Womb Banks is the chapter.
Hmm.
An increasing number of women from all over the world are jumping onto the surrogacy bandwagon. They know they have an edge over their men because they have wombs and eggs. And thanks to technological advances, these often burdensome biological appendages have suddenly acquired a commercial value. So, nobody bothered about your eggs or your wombs before, but now suddenly there is.
Hmm.
But for
Hmm.
how long is it before scientists find a means of creating artificial replacements for these unique biological parts too. Cutting-edge research around the world points towards a new era in which embryos created through sexless reproduction could be incubated and brought to term in artificial wombs. So there may come a time when natural human eggs and wombs become obsolete. In 2012, a London-based biologist, Aarti Prasad, brought out a book called Like a Virgin, How Science is Redesigning the Rules. The book took the reader on a journey into the world of artificial wombs and sexless reproduction. She said most cultures narrated the story of a maiden who gave birth even though she was never touched by a man. Was this just a myth, or can babies be made through virgin births in the future? She explored inconceivable ideas about conception. She wrote about creatures like the Jesus Christ lizard, which had the ability to walk on water and self-reproduce as well, and about scientists in the 1950s who tried to find a real-life virgin mother. She also spoke about modern laboratories where geneticists were exploring the possibility of non-sexual reproduction using inventions like egg fertilizing computer chips and even artificial wombs for men.
Wow.
So this is the kind of world into which we may be going. And so I have also said about the artificial uterus which is being developed. So I have questioned whether there would be a time when, you could just continue to work. Suppose working women didn't want to take time off. They could continue to work and then go and look at the embryo growing inside the artificial womb,
Oh,
and then
wow.
continue, and then would that baby would be fed all the correct nutrients, but would it get the empathy it would get from a real mother? And is that
That's right.
empathy important? Is it scientifically important? Does I've also explored various things like does what you eat, does it really affect the baby in your womb? Because many of these women, surrogates who are hired, sometimes the parents come and tell the doctor, I want to have only a vegetarian surrogate, or I want only a non-vegetarian surrogate, you know,
Okay.
because they think that that is going to affect. And another parent I knew took lot of Carnatic music, classical music, and forced the surrogate to listen to it. uh, Things which are happening, whether, and when I talk to doctors, they say, it really doesn't help. So they this kashayam, medicine, the tradition medicines which our mothers used to give, our grandmothers used to give. So they'll take it and give it to the surrogate. And the surrogate may be coming from a totally different kind of environment from which you grew up, and she may not like to have it, but she would be forced to have it. These are all the very complex. It's so complex. It's not possible to discuss it in, you know, simply. Yeah.
Asha has a query, Geeta.
Yeah.
Asha
Mm.
asks, what do you think of
Mm.
these women who had to give away their child? Don't you think it's a lifelong trauma for them?
Yeah, Asha is talking from her own experience where her mother had to give her away, I think. And yes, it is a lifelong trauma both for the child and for the mother. And it happens because of certain circumstances which force, and there are a lot of girls, women who are now grown up, who live in foreign countries and who are being traumatized by this whole adoption business, because they don't even know why they were given away in adoption. They come back searching for their roots and so on. And now that brings me, Asha, also to another question. At least you were able to find your mother and find out what happened and all that. Now, when a child is created from incognito mother's egg, because we are not allowed to reveal the mothers who donated the egg, or incognito sperm, or then that child will never ever be able to find out where it came from. It may have several mothers, it may have several. I'm saying it because that is how we begin to look at a child like that after some time. So genetically, a child who has been created through surrogacy, especially if it's born from gametes which have been um, not belonging to the parents who bring them up. So a child can have several mothers, the surrogate mother, the mother who comes, so many uh, uh, mothers that a child could have. So yeah, this is another complication too.
Trisha Ghosh says that I really liked it that all throughout your book, Baby Makers, you have been neutral about your opinion. So, well, you've been objective and neutral about your opinion. And okay, Radhika has this query. Are clinics allowed to house surrogates through the pregnancy now? Where does the, I can't read the whole thing. Where does the, okay. Are clinics allowed to house surrogates through the pregnancy now?
I think so. I don't think there's been any change in that. Right now, they're still housing the surrogates. Actually, the whole bill has not yet been passed completely. I mean, it was passed by Lok Sabha, but then it was amended, and now the artificial reproductive technology bill is also on the table. So, again, Radhika, I'm not very sure about the present situation today, but as far as I know, I think. For instance, some of the big clinics are still housing the surrogates, but I know there were raids on some clinics and said that they were doing something illegal by housing these surrogates and all that. So what the government has essentially done is put the whole thing into some kind of a gray area where there is no law, there is and a law. Even if the bill is passed, nobody is happy because it's going to create a lot of problems. We have some
What kind of
really scary.
problems? Would you
If
specify
the
the
bill is
problems?
passed,
Yes.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah. If the bill is passed, then there are still it is still not a wholly inclusive bill. There is still some people who may not be able to, though a lot of those very, very offensive things have been taken out, like same-sex couples cannot have babies, or um, you have to have proven infertility and have to be married for 5 years before you can go in for having a surrogate. All those have been removed because obviously, suppose a person is born without a womb, or you know that you're infertile even when you are married, or suppose you're not married and you want to have a baby through surrogacy. So all that has been removed. But there are still a lot of gray areas, and for that I'll have to read from my article where I have, specified some of the things. But another comforting thing is technology um, act, which is being a bill, which is also ready to be passed. Now that several doctors and others who are in the field worked on it. It was brought to this stage, but that was completely ignored when the surrogacy bill was being tabled. Now that has been taken out and dusted, and it has been, it is also being tabled, and I mean, whenever the next parliament session is willing to take it up, it would come. But surrogacy is not considered something of uh, great importance when there are other economic and other problems going. So such bills usually keep getting pushed and pushed. So as a result, in a way, the surrogates still continue to come, and they're able to, the doctors still able to do many things. But all the gray areas and all the areas which are really problematic have not, we cannot address anything. So we really need a law. But that law has to be inclusive, it has to be thoughtful, it has to take into consideration all the aspects, the very complicated aspects. There are people who are specializing in surrogacy law, and they do the contracts and all that. But somebody questioned, can the surrogate read the contract? In what language is the contract? Surrogates are usually not even able to read and write. So they need to have an interpreter. Now that interpreter can become a an agent's person, and they can, and will the surrogate understand what is being said? There's so many complications, Teresa, that it's not easy to just kind of pass a bill in this. So what most countries have done is, okay, no surrogacy. That's what they say. And what they're essentially doing is telling infertile couples, and infertility is a medical problem. They're telling them, no, you cannot take advantage of the medical advances in medical science which are available to you because this problem have not been ironed out. It's like a vicious circle.
Vicious cycle. Okay. And another common allegation is that surrogacy is also a gigantic money spinning industry. Do you agree? That's a common allegation.
Not surrogacy. I think mainly what they mean is IVF, because in vitro fertilization is expensive, and there are doctors who are specialized in it, and it is expensive. So, it's not like, and percentage of success is pretty low actually. Though some of the doctors, some of the doctors kind of tell their patients, I'll give you 100% success, 80%. I think it's below 50% success through um, IVF cycles and all that. So, yeah. So whether it's money spinning, I don't know. Yes, they do make money, but then there are many that the parents who go in for that also are prepared to pay that amount of money. The surrogates themselves don't make that much money, so how can you call surrogacy a money spinning thing? They at best, the surrogates may be paid 4 to 5 lakhs, and they may have to go through several cycles of implantation, and then they may have to have hormone doses, and there's several things that they have to undergo. So how could you say that it's money spinning for them? The people who are hiring the surrogate must be earning in lakhs to be able to get into this whole cycle itself. So I think we have to make a very clear distinction between IVF, and surrogacy, and we also have to take into consideration all the agents who are, and now because the IVF clinics are not allowed to directly hire surrogates, so the parents have to go through an agent. Now that agent would be the most exploitative of the lot. He may promise the surrogate some amount, he may not give it. He may take it from the doctor. So all this is, many of these complications have to be ironed out still.
And while researching for your book, did you
Mm.
notice any geographical location in India where surrogate clinics operate, or it's like is there a concentration of surrogates or surrogacy clinics in certain parts of India? I mean, which parts of India do you think? I haven't heard much about surrogacy in Northeast India. I'm sure there are, but so I'm just wondering, I mean, is there anything, are they concentrated in some particular part of India?
You know what? I think once you become conscious of fertility clinics, they're not called surrogacy clinics, they're called fertility clinics.
Oh, okay.
You will find that they are scattered all over the country. It's not one part or the other. Some are very famous, like in Hyderabad, there are some very famous uh, fertility clinics. In Bangalore has quite a few, and I'm sure Assam has many fertility clinics. Like Anand, of all places, where which are originally known for its milk, is now very famous for Akanksha, which is a fertility, one of the oldest ones. In Delhi, Bombay, I went to a clinic in Bombay which was specializing in uh, providing surrogates for gay foreign couples, men. Usually, women don't need a surrogate. No, it's only men who need, because women have their own wombs, so they can have the IVF done and they can produce their own babies. But if it's a gay male couple, they may need surrogates. So they were doing that. And there was in Delhi, I came across clinics, but many clinics in North India do not have surrogate homes where they keep.
Mm.
Some of them have, some of them don't have. So,
Mhm.
and in Chennai also, there are any number of clinics where
Mhm.
fertility clinics. So I think
Mhm.
it's spread all over. And about the Northeast, another thing
Mhm.
which has been doing the rounds, which I haven't verified yet, is since Northeast women are kind of fair and different looking, and
Mm.
their their looks and the color of their skin, etc., is kind of desirable.
Mm.
So the eggs of Northeast women are now
Mm.
in demand. So
Mhm.
this is, in my opinion, a danger sign because it can become exploitative, as the Nepalese women have been totally exploited by clinics in Mumbai because of the color of their skin and they feel it'll be more matching to European or foreign things. So now
Um,
that is one thing. And another
mm.
thing that I heard also from somebody, a gentleman wrote to me. He himself is a doctor from Bangalore who's living in USA. And he said he had registered for IVF and but he couldn't get a surrogate in India because people are very unclear as to whether they can hire a surrogate, whether they cannot hire a surrogate, what can they do. So
Mm.
he was asked to get a surrogate from Nigeria or some African country.
Mm.
And so he said he went there and then he hired a surrogate there and now he has to monitor. And then he
Mm.
had to get that surrogate to come to India so that
Mm.
she could deliver the baby over here and
Mm.
get get it registered over here. So it's become
Mhm.
much more complicated all over. Nepal
Mhm.
has put a clamp down on surrogacy, so that also is,
Mhm.
has problems and so on. Mm.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay. So, if our readers have any more queries, I think it's been a very interesting discussion, and we need more conversations around these issues, which are like, usually spoken of behind the closet, and we we need, and I think your book is a valuable addition to this whole surrogacy issue in India. And I think it would be a learning experience for parents who want to go for surrogacy. And hopefully we have a more comprehensive bill which is all inclusive. And we'll just wait for a few minutes if our readers would like have more queries, if there are more questions. And so
It's also a
was
very
it
controversial topic. It's also a very
yeah, it's
controversial topic,
very
Teresa, because
controversial. Yeah.
mine was the very first book, or I mean, comprehensive book on surrogacy which came out. And
Mhm.
afterwards, there have been several other books, and many have questioned why I have taken the side. I mean, I have not actually, I'm not pro surrogate or anti surrogate anything. I'm just an observer. And as a journalist, that's all I should be. I should not,
Hmm.
so I, I sincerely feel that demonizing the whole process is
Hmm.
really unwarranted. And I
Hmm.
think there are very lot of compassionate people involved in it, and I think we should understand it, looking at it from all angles. Yeah, any
Mhm.
other questions I would be happy to answer.
Yeah. And was it very challenging writing the book? Was it easy to get information? Because since people don't want to talk about it, even if people who have
Yeah,
gone through, even
yeah,
parents don't want to talk about it.
yeah.
So how could you convince them to tell you about their story?
You know, most of the clinics themselves didn't want to really want me to
Mm.
come and talk to the, and finally they did. I mean, in journalism, as you know, you have to be persistent and keep.
Mhm.
The thing is that many of the stories I got on the sidelines, when I was just sitting in clinics and waiting for the doctor to see me or for whoever had given me an appointment to see me, I would see
Mhm.
other people sitting there and, suddenly somebody would talk to me. I would ask something, and the whole story would come pouring out because
mm,
they were in such distress, such tension. Even the parents who come to give, come to hire us,
mm,
go through IVF.
mm,
Very weirdly, very strangely, when I was just sitting in a clinic in Ahmedabad or Anand or somewhere, and
mm,
there was a foreigner, there was a white man and a Indian wife sitting. And the Indian wife was asking some questions, and she spoke in with a heavy Malayalam accent. I've lived
mm,
in Kerala a long time, so
mm,
I just asked casually in Malayalam, "Are you a Malayali?"
mm,
And her whole story came pouring out. How much they had been exploited by various, adoption agencies, by clinics, and how tough it was, and how they were both growing older. She was
mm,
above 45 and he was above 50, and they
mm,
were too old to adopt. That whole story. And that also gave me an idea of how much the clinics charge and,
mm,
what happens and all that. It was
mm,
another time when I was sitting in another clinic in Bangalore, and there was a couple who had come there, and they had been trying for a baby for quite a long time. And now they had decided that finally they'll go through IVF and hire a surrogate. So
mm,
they went to one of the top clinics in Bangalore, and those people had said, the chances of getting an embryo through your gametes is like 50%, less than 50%. But they
mm,
came to this clinic, which was the clinic I'm talking about, which got shut later on. And
mm,
he said, no, no, you can get 100%. I'll give you 100% chance. And he
mm,
was going to charge half of what the other clinic was. So this, to the gentleman over there, the man
mm,
in the husband
mm,
in the
mm,
couple, that was more interesting, that 100% chance and half the cost. And the
mm,
wife was saying, let's go back to the other clinic because that's what was highly recommended. They came from Andhra, I think.
mm, mm,
Then, I mean, they were talking to me and I forgot about it. And we exchanged phone numbers. And then I
mm,
came away. And then sometime later, that man phones me up and he says, you know what? They have they said 100%, and yes, 100% they got an embryo, and it has been put in the surrogate, and I've heard the first heartbeat. But the doctor is now telling me that I have to pay double of what he had originally said. That's what I
mm,
said. He said about the project. So he said, I want the baby very badly. Now what should I do? I said,
mm,
you don't have a contract, you don't have anything, and you want the baby. And I was almost 100% sure that it wasn't his baby either. Because, when the
mm,
doctor said, so many doctors had told him that that thing is not viable.
mm,
I couldn't follow up after that because he cut off my number and I forgot about it. But,
mm,
these are the stories from the sidelines when people
mm,
confide in you because they know they're not going to meet you again later.
mm,
And they will
mm,
read the book.
mm.
Yeah.
So, if you want to know more about surrogacy in India, please read Gita's book, Baby Makers. Gita, can you show us your book again before
Yeah.
we wind up? Yeah,
Yeah. This is my
yeah.
book. Can you see it?
Yeah. So it was lovely talking to you, Gita, and keep
Yeah.
writing. And
Yeah.
we hope to
Okay.
read more books by you. Yeah.
Yes,
So
Teresa.
good night, everyone. Thank you. It was a very interesting discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.